Welcome to channel AMAC, your insight to the Australian visa system. Good day everyone, my name is Carl Young, your online YouTube visa consultant. Are you interested about migrate to Australia? Why don't you consider to subscribe to my channel and turn on a little bell on the side so once we have all the updates and news, you'll be the first one of getting all the insight. Now today's video is topic on about the coming up federal election 2022 of Australia, and also how that election might change the path or perhaps pave the way of the new immigration policy for Australia. I think if you're interested about migrate or study abroad in Australia, this will actually be very interesting topic for you. Now, obviously, we know that the Australian as a government had already opened up its borders since 15th of December 2022, and not just welcoming the travelers, but also welcoming the Omicron variant virus. And it has taken a huge hit, especially at this point of time. Australia is at the opening day and week for all the schools where all the parents are really, very, very care and also worried about how the virus will actually hit more and more families in Australia. So this will obviously affect the whole economy, the nation, and the party, and of course the upcoming federal election. So today I'm like to take numbers of news articles recently and also take a look at the opposition party, how they proposed perhaps giving a shape of what the immigration policy will look like if there's a change of government in 2022 for Australia. Okay, now first one, let's have a look at this news. This actually came out on 1st of February, which is today. Australia risks losing future skilled workers and citizens as international student number plummet. Now, for sure, what happened back in March 2020, the Prime Minister of Australia announced that to get all the temporary visa holders to leave Australia because of the pandemic, and obviously it had taken a huge hit as Australian dollars plummeted to the low of perhaps in the last 7 or 10 years, and also the economy has taken with the huge hit on the Fortress Australia idea, where no one can exit out of Australia and no one can actually enter into Australia. So the migration number had actually, this is including the travelers or the temporary visa holders, had actually plummeted to a negative figure, which is first time in history after World War II we've have done. If you're a fan, a subscriber on my channel, you probably have seen and heard this information that I previously been passing around, not by myself, but these are actually news articles and information and government records showing what has been happened. So opinion, COVID-19 has been international student number half in Australia. So remember back in 2019, Australia has actually taken the crown, which UK had actually been number 2 in the international education industry in the world. But now, since the pandemic, obviously, this is actually overkill the international education market for Australia. So this is a major issue, as I have noticed. I'm not just in the field of visa services, but also in the study abroad as well. So we know that a lot of our old friend who used to be in the marketing sector for a lot of the university and TAFE and private institutions, they left. The boss no longer need them anymore because there's no market. No one's going in and coming into Australia. So detail of this news article isn't very hard to depict, as we know that international students are looking high quality, relevant curriculum and credential with better career plan, but they have changed. Some of them going to Canada, UK and USA, but some probably did not do anything because they probably still taken online courses. But again, if the student body is not actually onshore in Australia, it will still take into effect of economy as well, because traditionally these international students not just bring the tuition fees, but the living cost and all the stuff that they enjoy and spend during the time they're in Australia. That's all gone. That is all gone. And not just saying how they can contribute as a working in Australia as well, and all this contribution is just basically wiped out. And as you can see, recent news came out that the skill shortage in Australia, there are still politicians saying that we don't need overseas skilled workers, but in fact, a land with massive acreage and the sixth largest continent in the world, and with only 25 million population, it just need more people to actually build the whole nation. So this is what's going on. Consider Australia lost so many international students in 2019 before pandemic, contribute estimate of 40.3 billion. Now that's all gone, and I think this is more important. That's a 250,000 jobs in Australia. Wow, can you imagine? 250,000 jobs all around Australia. Now we only got 25 million. Now how many? What's the percentage of that, right? So anyway, that's what's going on. Australia. So the writer continues saying that Australia must extend welcome mat. So there's going to be more and more stimulate policy, perhaps from visa and the migration policies, to actually attract more. We already seen that, how Australian government is giving out refund for the student visa applications when you return back from by March, and also the extended 485 visas. And also I think there's coming up more, as I expected, the policies to actually move towards permanent residency. But I think that's going to be coming up later in July 2022. But if it's going to be July 2022, that's probably already finished, completed the elections. So we're going to talk about that later this video. This is not a short-term issue, so anyway, I'm not going to go through all detail, the wordy stuff, but here we go. The what happened back in couple of days ago, this is actually yesterday, Scott Morrison coalition has slumped further in their news poll. So the current government, obviously led by the Prime Minister Scott Morrison coalition minister, the opposition is ahead. The news poll is 56-44. That means if we're going to have election this weekend, obviously the current government will be wiped out. Well, not wiped out, but it's going to be a change of government. So as coronavirus pandemic dragged on, Labor has increased its lead. I think it's predominantly caused by this the open up of the border and bring it into the Omicron variant virus, which has caused a lot of problem and obviously a lot of death as well, which is not as what the government was promised to the population, to Australians. Because, well, I think that's similar around the world, because everyone thought that after we get vaccinated, we won't get infected. So if we don't get infected, we won't die, right? But it was wrong. This is 100% wrong. I mean, scientifically, you see on news every day, Australia has been vaccinated with over 90% double doses, and still get thousands and tens of thousands of infections every day. So, and that's a problem. That's causing the government to lose its credentials. And obviously that's the same thing happening in USA, because you see Biden's administration is losing its poll as well if they take another election right now this week. Same all across every other nations. So that's a huge issue at this point in time. So it doesn't look too good, but they still got about 3 to 4 months to figure out how they can pull perhaps another 6 to 7% up, so they can lead in the news poll. But anyhow, I'm not too sure how that will be done, but we will take a prediction, perhaps putting it into a hypothesis. What if the current government of Australia lose their election? What will happen? We will also look at the opposition party, Labour Party's immigration policy, so that you have a more firm ideas where we are heading towards. Make sure you stay till the end of this video though. The next news just came out as the Prime Minister Scott Morrison had actually been on the media press in Canberra. So the topic says Scott Morrison admit. Wow, I've never seen Prime Minister of Australia admit any wrongdoing, but to date is the day. Admit mistakes and express regret over government's COVID-19 response, which is reflect to the recent response to the Omicron variant. I think that, but again, there is no other way to do so unless the nation of Australia continues to be a fortress Australia, so not opening the border, but that's gonna cost the economy more. So I think this is actually a very hard decision for Scott Morrison to make, but he wanted to take that as the burden of his prime ministership. I think that's the good thing that he has done. So this is the first major speech in 2022. Admit he hasn't got everything right. So let's have a good read about what happened here. So Prime Minister Scott Morrison admit that government had made mistakes throughout ongoing pandemic, expressing regret over the misstep to regain public support. Obviously, this is caused by the virus going all around. So almost like 70 or 80% of my mates and friends, perhaps more, that I know of still in Australia, they probably already contracted COVID-19. So Mr. Morrison addresses National Press Club in Canberra on Tuesday, that's today, responding to mounting frustration in response to Omicron variant heads on in speech, conceding I haven't got everything right. So I think no one had actually thought about how Omicron could actually have that breakthrough infections ability to go bypass all these vaccinations. We even seen people get vaccinated 3 doses and still in Australia, figure you can find that out, they still die after they got infected. However, stop short of apologizing Australian public when confronting with the journalist. Recognizes too optimistic. Basically what he meant is that he thought the 90% plus vaccination rate to actually secure the health and safety of the general public of Australia, but that wasn't the case. And I think that's the same thing all across the world, as we see what's happening in Europe, in Korea, in Japan, and in America. We're not saying America is getting 1 million infections per day, and that's very horrifying, but from what I can see and through what I feel from my friends and families in Australia, I think they're still living in a normal routine. What do you think? Although the only difference is if you're living in Western Australia. You probably have checked it out, my video yesterday. It's a different story where WA locked out every single state and territory of Australia. So this is Scott Morrison's first major speech, admitting he hasn't got everything correctly done in response to the Omicron variant coming into Australia. So Omicron changed all the rule defending delay of sourcing widespread or rapid antigen tests. Whether or not that's going to work or PCR is going to work, there's even saying another sibling of Omicron could actually bypass PCR or things like that. But there's a fact that we do know that Omicron is not actually not as deadly as the previous variant, and that's for sure, because the death rate is considerably low, inconsistent. So that's what's happening, and obviously Scott Morrison does have a lot of burden to take on as the federal elections coming up. But I think the opening up of border and also opening up for the travel and tourist visas before Easter is another milestone that the government of Australia, whichever the party is going to be, they'll have to do it, because if they don't do it, Australia is not a traditional nation that actually manufacture and do a lot of exporting trades, because it doesn't manufacture anything. So it heavily relies on the resources export, and after that will be international education and tourism. Okay, so if no visitor and no more people coming into Australia, the economy is gonna collapse, and that's for sure. So that's what's happening. That's the burden of any prime minister whoever is gonna be on the throne at the in 2022 had required to make that decision. I don't think any other prime minister will make a much different decision than this one. But anyway, let's take a hypothesis. If the coalition, the Liberal National Party, loses the elections in May 2022, what will happen if Labour take back as the ruling party? What's gonna happen? Let's have a look. So this news article came from October 15, 2021. So about how many ago? 3 months ago, 3 or 4 months ago. Now, Christina Keneally is the Shadow Minister for Home Affairs, so obviously the opposition party taking on the immigration side of the policy. So she's MP, and she also calls for post-pandemic overhaul. Now, what does that mean? That means more migrants is better. If you do know the history of Australia long enough, you may notice that the Labour Party is, although it's a Labour Party, supposedly they are more connected to the unions and the local workers, but they do promote more migrants and visas, and also multiculturalism as well. So let's have a look. Okay, what she said. Okay, so Keneally has weighed into Australian post-pandemic migration debate, questioned federal government's progress in devising plan meet the looming challenge. So what had happened, this probably true, so she took on a virtual speech to the Migration Institute, which is the industrial body for migration industry in Australia, as we start to open up the world again, which is now, where Mr. Morrison planned to restart Australian migration program. Her comment came as New South Wales on Friday became the first state to remove, that's the first time remove quarantine requirement for fully vaccinated travellers since Australia shut its international border in March 2020. Migration has plunged into a negative level for the first time since World War II. So that's exactly what I said in the beginning of this video. Under the National Reopening Plan, the federal government has outlined gradual reopening of international travel once key vaccinated threshold of 70 to 80% are reached. Now, we are today 90+%. So obviously, we are looking at a full opening of the border. But at that time, back in October, there wasn't Omicron, though. But I think the opposition minister will still have the same plan as well. So Prime Minister has indicated that prioritizing return of skilled migrants and international students. And Senator Keneally said that the historical moment of closing international border had presented a chance to transform the migration program. Now, transforming from what? Transforming, if you follow my channel long enough, you may notice back in 2017 and 18, the program was focusing on getting more temporary workers, no permanent residency increase of quota. So and they also decrease the annual the quota take from 190,000 down to 160,000. So what Senator Keneally is saying here is transforming migration program from what they used to be a conservative migration program to be a more opening policy. She called for a migration program that support good, secure job Australia and stamps out wage theft and exploitation. A migration program that create equitable economic growth which all Australians can share. And also, although she doesn't provide a concrete policy, well, she couldn't because she is literally not the minister. She's only a shadow minister, so she cannot really point out a straightforward policy there. So she will have more to say before the election. I think that's a very important part as the federal elections coming up. But I from my estimation and prediction, based on the historic policy that I have researched by, every time that the economy of Australia goes down, the government of Australia always use immigration policy to attract more migrants in order to bring back, to balance back the economy. That's always the way to do it, because Australia does not provide mass manufacturing of goods and deliver all around the world, and that is the issue. I think Australia is getting into a pathway to turn it all around, perhaps because, well, the one virus has changed the face of this earth already. She did push on a renewed focus on permanent settlement. Here we go. Okay, she's trying to say that you have issuing so many visas, but you do not allow these people to stay permanently, so these people won't contribute to the nation. And the Senator Keneally also quoting a former Prime Minister, John Howard. John Howard is actually a former Prime Minister under the Liberal National Party. So, wow, okay, anyway, so what happened? So John Howard said, you either invite someone come here permanently or you don't invite them at all. Well, that's great. I think this is the most important sentence of today's video. This is where the guideline is. We're looking at a future Australian immigration policy that's going to be more friendly and more invites and more quota and more number for permanent residency intake. Now, only if the election has been lost by the current government and the change of government has taken place. But we'll see what happened. Okay, the Labour Senator raised the concern of temporary migration had risen in historic highs. So that's what happened. What happened in the current government? Well, they started all these policy back in 2017 until 2019, and then when it hit pandemic, the whole system collapsed. So you see the overhaul. They were looking to drop the permanent intake from 190,000 down to 160,000. Now more and more of these Liberal national leaders coming out saying no, we gotta turn around. So we've seen the budget plan. They wanted to make it more and more than 200,000 plus. She says she wanted to turn into a successful model of migration ahead, and so on and so forth. I think that's the most important thing. And bipartisan parliamentary report handed out in August, that's 2021, recommend the federal government investing in making it easier for skilled migrants to get permanent residency. So I've done a video specifically on this one as well. This is from the parliamentary committee. So we are expecting a more and more policy coming out this year to actually be a more friendly permanent intake. So that's what's gonna happen. Now let's wrap it up for this video. It's a little bit long because I want to take the historical issues and what's happening now. So obviously for a democratic nation Australia, the government do have burden and do have pressure and stress from the public. So what happened is the open up of the border obviously is planned it, but didn't expect a variant called omicron to actually spread it out massively and infected everyone, even though Australia has already got 90+% vaccinated, and that take a huge hit. So Scott Morrison actually admit it was he should have done better. So the news polls show that the current government is actually losing its feet. Whether or not they can get it back within these 3 to 4 months, we'll see what happens. But if the government do change in 2022, here we go. We have just revised and reviewed what the potential Home Affairs Minister, if Labour government, will take on as the ruling government of Australia. Then the immigration policy will actually be very bright. If so, that's what I'm saying. With the next 3 to 5 years, it's gonna be a major window if you do have that interest to migrate to Australia. Anyhow, should you have more question query, more than welcome to leave a comment right down below. And I'll see you next video. Goodbye.